Morning,
Good
Les.
morning. Good morning, David. I was trying to beat you to it, David.
We haven't figured out who's going to say good morning first, have we? We have to have some type of hand signal going. So
Right.
we goofed up that entry play. So anyway, good morning, everybody. You're here to do with dynamic healing moments with Dr. Les Aria, a PhD psychologist, and myself, an orthopedic spine surgeon. And we're talking about anger. And we've been on this for a while. Just to remind you that there's a genealogy of anger, that you have a circumstance that you blame, then you're a victim, and then you're angry. And so as soon as you start blaming people while your blood flow shifts, you're reacting to something from the past, unless you just said something I thought was really good, as far as when, let's say you irritate me, which you never do. I know you're trying to irritate me, but you're not going to get
I
right.
am trying to irritate you.
Right. But okay, so you've irritated me. It's my issue, but it feels like you. And the problem is when you're anxious or angry, you're reacting. You're not here, you're there in the past. But you said something about anger that intrigued me, the way you said it about being in the past when you're triggered like that.
Yeah, I think let's kind of give some science behind this. When we're activated with a raw emotion like anger, we can go from irritated, frustrated, anger to rage.
Right.
The continuum, it can just go right. And so when we're activated like that, as you've mentioned several times last week, this week, even today, that we really go offline, and that means that your thinking goes out the door, your survival instincts come about. You're trying to basically defend yourself because you feel violated at some point, whether disrespected or not heard or dismissed, right? And so when we get to that level of heightening of our nervous system, what's really crazy, David, and the audience is it's like a tsunami floods us. It's like what the brain does is it goes back into a warehouse and pulls out all the files, and then it dumps it in the middle of our brain, to use a metaphor, and then we feel this tsunami that floods us, and we feel our body temperature change. We may not notice it at that point. We notice that we might grit our teeth, and the words come out. And so what people don't seem to recognize, including ourselves from time to time, is when we're angry, we're opening the door to the past of old hurts and how people violated, hurt us, dismissed us, did not feel validated. So that's a really key point. And so we need to kind of have some skills to this, but I wanted you to comment on, what are your thoughts about that, about when we're angry, how it opens up the floodgates of the past?
Well, I mean, I'm now convinced, since I spent most of my life being angry in the form of perfectionism, and now I have actually times when I'm not angry, believe it or not. So the contrast is really different. So it really is temporary insanity, but here's the problem. So blood supply shifts from your thinking centers to the lower centers. Your brain's inflamed, you're hypersensitive, you're hyperreactive, and you honestly simply cannot think clearly. But the ironic part of it is it's called negative transference, that you think you're thinking really clearly. You have the courage of your convictions. So what happens, you don't actually have the mental capacity at that point to even recognize you are angry. So the first step with all of this is becoming aware you are angry. And I just have some objective signs for me personally. If I'm being really self-critical, if I'm being critical of somebody else, if I'm just right, or I'm frustrated, or that type of thing, to encourage my convictions. So remember, anytime you feel like you're a victim of anything, just even victimized by traffic, you may not even feel angry, you just sort of whatever, you're so used to it. I mean, the problem with me was I get so used to being angry in the form of perfectionism as one of them. It was normal. So again, when you actually are angry, you actually can't necessarily think clearly enough to recognize that you are angry.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something very important there. You sound like an ACT therapist for just a few seconds there, David. So,
I actually listen to you. I'm in so everybody, I'm in training right now.
Come on, David. Who are we fooling here? All right. So,
right.
All right. So one of the things she said is a very key point that I teach my patients this in acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, is when we are not psychologically flexible, we're in that, when we're really angry, we become inflexible. And inflexibility shows up differently for a variety of people. one of the common things that shows up is you're right and they're wrong. The
Right,
rigidity of the thought process is a clue that you're deep in your anger. A
right,
second thing is this is when it sounds, smells, and looks familiar. Because what's really amazing is how the brain does, and we've talked about this in other shows and things like this, David, is the brain does predictive coding. It takes the past and current complaints and mushes them up together and then kind of shows up in our body and our thoughts. So what we're trying to show you here today is this, is what are your signs and symptoms? One of mine is when I actually become very rigid, like as I said, I feel I'm right and you're wrong. In that inflexibility, I
right.
know my anger mode.
Right, and you just have to be objective about it because you just can't see it. In other words, you can't see what other people are seeing. So tone of voice, body language, you think you're hiding your anger, you are not.
Yeah,
And so, right, right.
right,
So,
right.
Les, I'm actually not pissed off at you this morning.
Well, that's good, David. I'm glad you're doing the
I'm
breath.
relaxed. It's nice seeing you. And so, so I'm aware I'm not angry. How's that?
Good, good, good. I love that. That's perfect.
So,
So,
can you give us some hints today? Okay, so you have some clue of being objective, opinionated, or whatever it is that just gives you an objective signal that you're angry. You're not going to be thinking clearly by definition. What do you do at that moment that you get triggered?
yeah. One of the first things that I do, and again, so the audience may go like, again, yep, again, because this is a lifestyle skill that will help hack your brain and body when you're overwhelmed. And one of the things that I want you to know is this, is the best way to do it is breath work. That's one. And I want to kind of enhance the audience knowledge they're using acceptance commitment therapy is this is after you've gotten to your breath work and to maybe 10 breaths. That's the common thing people do.
Is
You
what
can
now?
you can do 10 breath.
Okay.
It's 10 breath work. But one of the things I've talked about in the show previously a few weeks ago was something called the 4-7-8. It's on my YouTube channel. I do it a very specific way. You can have your eyes open and do 4 counts in, hold for 7, and then out for a count of 8 through your pursed lips. You
Okay.
do about 3 to 5 of that, it deactivates the primitive parts of your brain. So one, you notice that, all right, something difficult just showed up. 2, you drop into your breath work. And then when you get done with that breath work, ask this question, does this feel familiar? And that's a question, is the past showing up in the present? I can assure you when you're angry, the past just showed up in the present. And a nice way to reprocess that is to actually recognize that you're angry and even just naming it, saying, yep, knowing that I'm angry, knowing that I'm angry.
I like that. That's a good one. Just naming that is really critical. That's big. And we talked about this yesterday also about Memorial Day is that part of the thing is if you really understand how much we really do have with gratitude, I mean, a lot of things we get angry about are just silly, crazy. It's not worth it. I mean, when do you live, if you're going to stay stuck in the past being angry, when do you actually live this life we've been given, which is a great life?
Right.
So, so our thoughts for the day. So the bottom line of today's conversation is we decided that when you're angry, you're offline. And I have a term called from reactive to creative. Anytime you're reacting, you can't think, you can't be creative.
Yeah.
So you take the letter C from the middle of the word, reactive, and put it at the beginning. If you can see first, you become creative. And you just mentioned inflexibility, which is the opposite of creative.
Yeah.
So that's the word for the day. That's the Davidism for the day. And what was the lessism was what, 478?
4-7-8, do the work.
478. And then also, I do think that's a big one. I had forgotten about this one, but naming it is really critical because you objectively, it just had to make an objective diagnosis on yourself. Okay, I'm angry. And then just let it ride. By the way, I do want to remind the audience of one final thing. When you do breath work, this is not some psychological construct. You're actually directly stimulating the vagus nerve, which is powerfully anti-inflammatory, and anger is very inflammatory.
Yep.
So this is Dynamic Healing Moments, and I'm David Hanscom. I can be found on the docjourney.com. My book is Back in Control, and Dr. Arya.
Yeah, please do. I'm Les Aria. And again, you can locate me on YouTube under the mindfulness channel. That's MYNDFULNESS. So mindfulness. And so under mindfulness channel, look up 478 or go to YouTube, type in 478 and Les Aria, and that should pull it up. And so I walk you through the circuitries of the brain and how to actually do it, and you get to practice with me.
Great. All right, Les, I appreciate it. I learned a couple things today, and great session. So thank you.
Take care,
All right,
everyone.
we'll
Have a
see
great
you.
one.
Bye.